Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to AnnoyingCow Sports. I'm your host, Anthony Mennel, and I don't know about y'all, but I am excited. Football is finally here. Yesterday was the first Saturday of college football, and it was a pretty good one. I know week one's a lot of puff games, but there were still some good games out there to be watched, and we are now 4 days away from the kickoff of the NFL season, the 100th season in the NFL, and we are 1 week away from the first Sunday of football. All right, we're going to kick things off here with some college football. I'm just going to kind of run down some of the top 25 games. Like I said, a lot of puff games. Only one ranked matchup this week of Oregon and Auburn, and it was a good one. So, Ohio State, number 5 ranked Ohio State, beat Florida Atlantic University 45-21. Nebraska beat South Alabama 35-21, probably a little closer than Nebraska was hoping that one would be. Clemson ran all over Georgia Tech 52-14. Texas A&M destroyed Texas State 41-7. You had the Utah and BYU, I forget what they call that matchup. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember. It's a rivalry game. They're both play in Utah. Sorry, I'm trying to Google it right now. I just look dumb. Oh, it's the Holy War. There we go. I feel like I should have known that. Called the Holy War by some. Battle of Utah there. You had Central Florida University beat Florida A&M 62-0. Wisconsin beat South Florida 49-0. One of the few close games in the top 25. Number 21, Iowa State narrowly escaped the upset against Northern Iowa in a triple overtime thriller. They ended up winning 29-23, scoring a touchdown, while Northern Iowa only got a field goal in that third overtime. Number 2, Alabama rolled over Duke 42-3. Stanford beat Northwestern in a pretty close contest, 17-7. Stanford had a late touchdown on a fumble that really widened the margin. It was largely a one-score game most of the way there. Penn State rolled Iowa 79-7. Washington beat East Washington 47-14. And probably what was the game of the night was Oregon, number 11 ranked Oregon versus number 16 ranked Auburn. Auburn ends up winning 27-21 as they score a touchdown with very little time left on the clock. Michigan State beat Tulsa 28-7. Number 3, Georgia rolls Vanderbilt 30-6. Number 6, LSU beat Georgia Southern 55-3. Number 7, Michigan beats Middle Tennessee 40-21. Texas rolls over Louisiana Tech 45-14. Iowa beat Miami of Ohio 30-14. Syracuse shuts out Liberty 24-0. And Washington State beats New Mexico State 58-7. That rounds out the top 25 games. A couple of the games that are a little more interesting. Boise State upset Florida State 36-31. You had Memphis beat Ole Miss 15-10. Now, Memphis was favored going into that game, but Memphis, I believe, is in Conference USA. Ole Miss SEC team. Definitely not something, you don't expect the big schools to lose very often. Thursday night, Cincinnati beat UCLA 24-14. There was a bit of a controversial no call on a fumble pretty late in that game. It kind of appeared the running back hurt his knee. It kind of appeared as he got hurt, he dropped the ball. But he was in a pile. It was hard to tell. It definitely had the appearance, though, that it was a fumble. If it would have been a fumble and they would have let the play out, UCLA scooped and scored. Would have made it a 3-point game pretty late in the fourth quarter. But when Cincinnati maintained the ball, they were able to handily run out the clock there. Another SEC school went down, got upset. Georgia State beats Tennessee 38-30. As a Big Ten and Ohio State fan, I just love seeing the SEC lose because they think they're better than everybody, and to hell with them. You had the Battle of the Carolinas. North Carolina beat South Carolina 24-20. And you had Nevada upset Purdue 34-31 as Nevada's true freshman kicker kicks a 56-yard field goal as time expires to win that game. And on top of that, he ends up getting a scholarship after the game. He was a walk-on, now on scholarship. They gave him the game ball and a scholarship after the game. It was a pretty cool moment there. There's still a couple more games this week. You have number 4 Oklahoma taking on Houston today at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Monday, Notre Dame takes on Louisville. And that ends up rounding out week 1 of college football. All right. Okay. So now we're going to move into the NFL here. So final preseason game was this Thursday. All NFL cuts had to be made by 4 p.m. on Saturday. Now, so teams, when players are cut, they go to waivers. I believe it's if you have less than 4 years in the NFL, you go to waivers. If you have more than 4 years in the NFL, your contract is terminated and you don't go to waivers. Teams are free to sign you. Now, if you do go to waivers, basically there's a waiver priority. So, and this is how it's set. So the clubs are assigned a priority from the first business day after the Super Bowl, which I believe the first business day is like in March when the season, like the off season technically kicks off, until after the third regular season week. They're assigned based on the draft order. So, for instance, you had the Cardinals, worst team in the league record-wise. They have the first priority claim. Then you have the Super Bowl champion Patriots, who have the 32nd waiver claim. Now, I bring that up, one, just to kind of be informative. Also, you see a lot of these trades where, like, I know the Patriots made a couple trades for some offensive linemen, giving up 5th, 6th round picks. And, you know, the question sometimes comes up, why give up a draft pick, even though it's a late draft pick, when you could potentially claim that person on waivers? Well, when you're a team like the Patriots and you have the last waiver priority, a lot of those guys won't get to you. So if you feel strongly about someone, if you really need that player, want that player to add depth to your team, you're better off just giving up that 5th, 6th round pick to make yourself better now. Sorry. All right. And then after week 3, beginning of the 4th regular season week, up until the Super Bowl, it's the reverse order of win-loss record. So every week it resets. And yeah, I don't know, I can't remember if I said it earlier, but you have 24 hours to claim players. Now, the NFL, so the cutdowns were yesterday at 4 p.m. Everyone had to beat their final 53. That included, if you had suspended players, they went on the suspension list. So all suspensions started yesterday at 4 p.m. If you had injured players, you can put them on the PUP, which is the physically unable to perform list. If you start the season on the PUP, you can't play in a game until week 6. Week 6 is your earliest return. You can come off later as well. Now you also can place players on the IR. I believe there's 2 types of IR. There's basically the IR where you're done for the year. And I don't know if there's a limited number of designations for this, but there's IR with the designation to return. I believe it's 10 weeks you have to wait, so week 10 being the earliest. And then it's Monday at noon, I believe, is when teams can sign practice squad players. Practice squad players have to be, I believe it's rookies are in their 2nd year, could be 3rd year as well, but I think it's only rookies in 2nd year. Each team gets 10 players, and it's not a bad gig being on the practice squad. You make $8,000 a week. So if you're on the practice squad all season, it's not a bad payday for 17 weeks of not really playing. I think you do a lot of scout teamwork, I believe, on the practice squad. All right, so we brought up some notable cuts. LaShawn McCoy got cut by the Bills. Now it looks like in Buffalo, they have a lot of trust in Devin Singletary, but it appears he's going to start the season as the backup to Frank Gore, and I guess TJ Yeldon's going to be the third man on that in that running back room. It's of most people's expectation that it won't take long for Singletary to take over. He was very talented coming out of FAU. They expect him to very quickly take over. Now, initially when McCoy was cut, there was a lot. It looked like, everyone expected, that's the player Houston was waiting for to get cut. But we'll get to that later on who Houston ends up bringing in. The other rumor was Kansas City, him being reunited with Andy Reid with his time when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. And that ends up where he goes. Now that kind of crowds things a little bit on, you have Damian Williams, who is expected to be the guy, get a lot of workload. You have Darwin Thompson, who got a lot of love this preseason, especially Damian Williams missed some time with an ankle injury in practice, and Darwin Thompson looked phenomenal. A lot of people thought he might take over the role, but now you almost have a three-headed monster potentially, all three guys split in time, which, good for the Chiefs. Not good if you're playing fantasy and you stash Darwin Thompson on just about every team you have. All right, another notable cut. So the Patriots cut backup quarterback Brian Hoyer. Patriots are only going to take two quarterbacks into the season on the roster. So they kept rookie Jarrett Stidham. He's going to be the backup. He was, I believe, a 6th-round draft pick out of Auburn. So he's the guy. He may be the guy to replace Brady out there eventually. But Hoyer's been kind of a career backup. He started in Cleveland over 2 seasons. He got injured, then came in the next year. I believe he was 10-6 as a starter in Cleveland. He also was a starter under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco a few years ago. Didn't fare too great there. But he's one of the, I think, better backups in the league. He'll end up finding a job somewhere. A lot of teams looking for backup quarterbacks out there. The Patriots cut wide receiver Demaryius Thomas. So Thomas is coming off an injury that he suffered late last year, but he's looked good in the preseason. Especially, he really showed out preseason game 4. I believe he had 2 touchdowns. I imagine he'll get signed somewhere. He showed he can still play. Granted, I know it was the preseason, but if you're bringing him in as a veteran presence in your wide receiver room, kind of that 3rd or 4th guy, if I know Houston just brought him in last year, it didn't really pan out, but I think he'll get signed somewhere. Then the Browns, kind of surprised, cut veteran punter Britton Colquitt. They ended up going with nicknamed the Scottish Hammer, rookie punter, former rugby player from Scotland. I know as a Browns fan, the thing I find the most interesting there is he had struggled at times as a holder. And when the Browns have had issues kicking field goals, holding's a big part of that. So hopefully things work out there. Again, any team looking for a punter, I don't know off the top of my head any teams with some punting issues, but Colquitt is, I believe, a 10-year vet. He'll fill in nicely there. Anyone who needs a punter. Those were some of the cuts I felt were most notable. I don't know if anybody in the in chat has any others they'd like to talk about. All right, well, I'm going to move on to the next section here. We're going to talk about some of the holdouts. So, coming in to this week, we had 4 holdouts. You had Ezekiel Elliott, Melvin Gordon, and Trent Williams, and Jadeveon Clowney. We'll get to Clowney in a minute as his situation has changed. So, over the last week, for Ezekiel Elliott, Jerry Jones has come out and said at one point they're expecting to miss Zeke for a few weeks. He's also come out and said how they want Zeke for the dog days of the season. They want him fresh for a playoff run. Honestly, sounded like he was kind of hyping up. We were confident missing him for the first few games. I believe they start the season against the Dolphins, the Redskins, and the Giants. 3 teams not expected to be good. 3 teams you could probably win without Zeke. That being said, they do play the Saints and then the Packers after that. 2 weeks where you'll probably need Zeke. But yesterday, a report came out saying that talks have intensified between the two, and they're aiming to wrap up a contract by the end of the week. I think Zeke's made it pretty clear that he's not going to play without a contract, and that contract is going to have to make him the highest paid running back in the NFL, surpassing Todd Gurley. I mean, all reports seem to look good, but I don't know. It's the Cowboys, and it takes one interview with Jerry Jones to say something that pisses Zeke off, and he doesn't want to sign a contract. But I think for all parties involved, Jerry knows he needs him to win football games, even though he's come out and said in the past that you don't need a stud running back. But the way the Cowboys are built, I think they kind of do. And I think Zeke wants to play football, but he also wants his money. He probably also enjoyed spending the preseason in Cabo training. Yeah, he's worth the money talent-wise. The big issue is there's such a short shelf life on running backs. And even when Zeke's been out with some suspensions, the Cowboys have proved that with a great offensive line, they can make just about anyone running behind that O-line a decent running back. So, but I do agree. He's definitely, the talent's there and the production. All right. Now to Melvin Gordon. So, things have been pretty quiet for Melvin. The last few weeks, really, it's kind of doesn't seem like contract negotiations are going anywhere. About the only thing is ESPN article by Eric D. Williams came out where they were projecting the 53-man roster for every team, and he expects Gordon to be back week 1. I think he said it was kind of just a hunch he has. There really hasn't been anything pointing in that direction. The team also did give him permission to seek a trade. The only thing is I don't know what teams are really, 1, need a running back, and 2, have the cap space to pay him. Now, I would have said the Texans, but the Texans made a lot of moves this last week, and I don't know if they have. I don't think he'll have the cap space anymore, and they almost don't have the need anymore. That being said, I think he's still an upgrade if the Texans were to make that move. I'm really trying to think around the NFL. There's not many teams that are running back needy right now. I think, the Bills feel confident in Singletary. Sorry. I think the Texans feel good about bringing in. We're going to get to that in a minute, but they did end up bringing Carlos Hyde. But I don't think they're going to find a trade partner. I don't think he will. I think he's going to end up eventually playing for the Chargers this season. However many games he has to play to occur a free agency year and then go test the free agent market next year. And Trent Williams. So I've been able to find even less on Trent Williams. The Redskins still seem to kind of refuse to trade him. And one of their biggest potential people to go to looked like the Texans. And the Texans traded for another left tackle. And he seems to not be willing to play for the Redskins. Redskins don't seem to want to pay him more. And I think I could see Trent Williams not coming back at all this season. All right. Do I think someone will pick up Sheehy? I think if he is practice squad eligible, he might make his way to a practice squad. I don't think this year he'll end up on a roster. for the most part. He just kind of seems quick. I think he's still got to work on being a wide receiver. All right. So that's pretty much it for the holdouts. So, like I've mentioned, kind of hinted at earlier, there was a series of trades that happened the last couple days. So, the Texans trade they trade Clowney to the Seahawks. So the Seahawks get Clowney and a third, and then the Texans got the Seahawks' third round pick. They got defensive end outside linebacker Jacob Martin and defensive end outside linebacker Barkevius Mingo. Now, both those guys are more of depth pieces at pass rusher, but I think Mingo might have a chance to start replacing Clowney for the Texans. Definitely kind of a void there on offensive line, making that move. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that really helps that defense much. I feel like they didn't get as much in return as they could have for him. I think part of that may be because Bill O'Brien's acting as the GM right now. They still don't have an official GM. But initially, it looks like the Seahawks won that trade, even if Clowney ends up being a one-year rental and they can't sign him past the franchise tender that he's signed this year. I did see that the Seahawks agreed to not franchise him next year, and then I believe the Texans are paying $7 million in a signing bonus, and the Seahawks are paying like $8 million guaranteed in base salary. So I think the Seahawks really definitely made out there. Like I said, even just for a one-year rental. So yep, the Texans had a hole at running back. They trade guard Martanis Racken to the Chiefs for running back Carlos Hyde. Been rumors that Hyde was going to get cut with the way Darwin Thompson was looking. Damian Williams assumed the number one guy there. And they went out and added LaShawn McCoy, which is interesting. I don't know if Shady at this point in his career is really an upgrade from Carlos Hyde. They're both just kind of older running backs. But I'd expected Carlos Hyde to probably take over as the main guy over Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson, the knock on him is he's not built to be a between the tackles runner all year long. And maybe closer to a 50-50 split. But I think Hyde will really be the main guy there. What do I think about the first season game not having the Super Bowl winner in it? I don't think it's a huge deal. I do think it still would have made sense. I know they've been doing that for a while now, since Thursday night games have been more prevalent. I think the first game of the season, you should raise the banner. And I think Sunday Night Football is kind of that. It seems to be the more traditional primetime game for the NFL, in my opinion. And I think that would have made a great Packers-Bears game. For the 100th year of the NFL, that's their reason for doing it. Packers and Bears are two of the oldest NFL teams from the original NFL. Some of the teams have probably been around almost as long, just have merged and moved around. I do think that would have made, to me, that makes sense. But I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. It don't make no difference to me. They're all games on week one. All right. So, another big trade made by the Texans. So, the Texans trade 2 first-rounders, one this year, one next year, a 2021 second-rounder, cornerback Johnson Botamosi, and offensive tackle Julian Davenport to the Dolphins for left tackle Jeremy Tunsil and wide receiver Kenny Stills. So it really shores up that offensive line. They get the left tackle of the future. as long as they can re-sign him. I believe he's in year 4 of his rookie deal, so he'll have another year after this. Tunsil will. And bringing in Kenny Stills, I think that's just kind of an added weapon, especially if they question the health of Will Fuller and Kiki Kuti. Not looking like Kuti's going to be ready week 1. Just trying to add weapons outside of DeAndre Hopkins. And, the offensive line was a big question. Getting one of the best left tackles in the NFL right now helps your offensive line immensely. I think that was a big move for the Texans. Texans are really going all in. They're not going to have a first rounder next year or a first and second rounder 2 years from now. They're really saying right here, right now, this is their year. And yeah, I think they got the team to do it. So thank you for the follow. Building like the Rams did. The Rams proved that it can work. And when they brought in Brandon Cooks, trading away a first-round pick for him. They may want to draft the guy from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman last year, so he'll be a sophomore this year. He won't be able to enter the draft till 2021. This year, though, you'll have most likely Tua. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, the quarterback from Bama. You'll have Justin Herbert, the quarterback from Oregon. He's a senior, so he has to come out. I believe Tua could opt to stay in college for another year, but it's not expected that he will. I believe Jalen Hurts, quarterback from Oklahoma, is a senior, so he'll have to come out into the draft. I think he'll be one of the best quarterbacks. I think he's got a chance to win the Heisman. Lincoln Riley's doing something special down there in Oklahoma. He's got back-to-back years of Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. Wouldn't surprise me to see a third. I believe those are really the top flight quarterbacks expected to enter the draft this upcoming year. So the Dolphins made another trade. They traded linebacker Kiko Alonso to the Saints for linebacker Vince Beagle. It's really a salary dump trade, it looks like. I think Kiko's the better linebacker, but he's in year 3 of a 4-year deal with about $6.4 million a year, while Beagle's on a 1-year deal for $645,000. Beagle's 3 years younger, but doesn't really seem. I don't think he's as talented. That being said, with the Dolphins really being in full rebuild mode, so they're projected to have 12 picks in 2020 in 2 of the first 3 rounds. So rounds 1, 2, and 3, they're going to have 2 picks each, which it's going to be quite a haul there. They'll definitely be a good kickstart to that rebuild. In addition to that, they're going to have about $100 million in cap space in 2020 as well. There's really no reason they shouldn't be able to turn this thing around in a year or 2, especially if they get their guy at quarterback, which that's another thing. Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to be the starting quarterback in Miami. As much as I love Fitzmagic, I think that's a bad move on the Dolphins' part. I think you got to throw Josh Rosen out there. You got to see what you have in Josh Rosen. Otherwise, why did you trade for Josh Rosen? If you're just going to start Ryan Fitzpatrick, there was no reason to give up what I think was a 2nd or 3rd round pick to bring in Josh Rosen to be your backup quarterback. I don't understand that. I feel like the reason you bring in Rosen is because you think, well, maybe we can get our quarterback of the future here. He's still on his rookie deal. Now, if you go and you draft a quarterback next year, Fitzpatrick, they can cut him. Only have $1.5 million dead cap if they cut him next year. He's under contract, though, too, as well for next year. Rosen will be going into year 3 of a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option. And potentially Rosen's going to be your backup, or he starts for a year while you try and groom your young quarterback you draft in 2020. I don't see the logic there, because with the trades they made, they're clearly not trying to win games this year. So if they think Fitzpatrick gives them a better chance to win, why, I don't understand why you're doing it. And even if you think he gives you a better chance to lose, again, you're trying to lose. So why wouldn't you see what you got in the quarterback you just drafted for? It perplexes me. I feel like there's a waste of a draft pick on a team that's trying to rebuild. Could use young talent at another position when you're clearly trying to tank this year. So jumping over to baseball here real quick, just kind of a rundown of the standings, where things are at here. So for first place in the American League, playoff-wise here, Yankees have a 1-game lead on the Astros. So the AL Central race, Twins have a 4.5 game lead on the Indians. As an Indians fans, I hate to say it, it looks like the Twins are pretty solid going to win the division at this point. The NL Central, Cardinals have a 2.5 game lead on the Cubs and a 6.5 game lead on the Brewers. Brewers looking about out of that division race at this point. And if the Cubs aren't careful, they might be in the outside looking in on not only the division but the playoffs. With the NL wild card, the Nationals have the top wild card spot. They have a 3.5 game lead on the Cubs, who have the second wild card spot. But the Cubs do have a 3.5 game lead on the Phillies. They have a 3.5 game lead on the Diamondbacks, charging here of late. A 4-game lead on the Brewers and the Mets. I think the Brewers and Mets are pretty much out of it here. I think it's going to come down to the Cubs and Phillies fighting for that last wild card spot. And the Nationals have pretty good handle on things there. And then finally the AL wild card. The Indians have the top wild card spot right now. They have a half-game lead on the Brewers. Or sorry, not the Brewers. The Athletics and the Rays, who are currently tied for that second wild card spot. And then Boston's 5.5 games back of that second wild card spot. Boston, as great as they are, great as they have been, they're pretty much out of the playoff race at this point. And it's really a 3-way race between the Indians, Athletics, and Rays for those 2 wild card spots. It's really anybody's game at this point. It's the closest race right now, so it'll probably end up being the most interesting race down the stretch, unless somebody gets hot in the National League.